Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webcast introducing disaster avoidance, leading the fight against day-old data. My name is Christophe Bertrand. I'm the VP of Product Marketing here at Arcserve, and I'm joined today by our Senior Product Manager for Cloud Solutions, Keith Summers, who's going to help me talk to you about how to avoid a problem or a disaster and how to mitigate those consequences with a great solution that we call Arcserve UDP Cloud Direct. So we'll cover a number of very interesting technical and features, as well as a great demonstration that will give you a better sense for how our solution works. Now, there is also going to be a very lucky winner today of a $500 Amazon card. So at the conclusion of the webcast, after the Q&A session, we'll have a name. So stay tuned, and there'll be a lucky winner again after the Q&A. We will also email you with a link to the replay of this webcast, and that will come to you later this week. So let's get started. Let's talk about how we can help you lead the fight against day-old data. One of the things that you need to know is, in order to do that, we have, first of all, really gathered a lot of experience as a business. We've been in business for many years, and more recently as an independent company. So Arcserve is actually a global business. We're present in many countries and distributed in many countries around the world, with sales offices, again, around the world, around the planet. And that has given us a ton of experience and expertise in how to build the best disaster recovery, backup and recovery solutions, whether we're talking about software, appliances, or more recently, disaster recovery as a service. And that's what we'll talk about today, and how we can help you mitigate the impact of disasters to the point where it looks like you avoided them. We've been recognized in many publications, many places around the world. We've received many awards for our technology, or technologies, I should say. And certainly we have this global dimension that allows us to truly understand what makes a solution successful and how to best serve your needs. So the one thing that we like to joke about is that essentially day-old data is really not that great when you think about it. What would you recover in a matter of minutes? What could be day-old data? And that's really the thing that could happen if you don't have the right type of solution in place, where from a service level agreement, what you recover, the recovery point objective, that data is too old, right? It's great to be able to stand up a virtual machine and get your data back, but if it's yesterday's backup, well, it's kind of like this rotten tomato or day-old sushi. Nobody wants it. So we're going to help you lead that fight against day-old data that you don't need, and we're going to help you with a great service that I want to talk about today. And the thing is that our focus is the mid-market. We are a company that focuses its attention on serving organizations of various sizes. I will say loosely from 500 to 2,500, 5,000 type of employees, and that's really a global number. Your mileage will vary depending on where you're located. But more importantly, what I mean by that is that system resiliency, higher availability of data, great recovery point objectives, and great recovery time objectives. Well, all of these expectations have become not just reserved to the enterprise. That's what we used to see in the past. Enterprise companies would have all of those great systems, and by the way, they still do, and it works really well. But guess what? In the mid-market today, you are expected as IT generalists, as IT experts, to deliver a very high level of service. We live in a world today where everybody has a portable device. They expect everything at their fingertip, just the touch of a finger, and an app shows up and the data is back and it's all magical. Well, guess what? In the real world, we know from an IT standpoint, it's not that simple. When incidents happen, maybe because of ransomware, maybe because of some human error, or as we've seen in North America, some natural disasters that could take a whole region out of commission. Well, when you don't have access to your data, you don't have access to your systems, what do? You're essentially not in business anymore. So the expectation that you should be up and running all the time, well, now applies to you in the mid-market. It's one thing though, because those requirements have moved down market, the technology has had to evolve, or in some cases has not evolved as quickly as it should. That's where we're going to come in and help with a great service, with great solutions that actually allow you to do this with limited budgets as well as great service levels. So that perfect combination that used to be reserved to the enterprise only, well, now we're going to bring that to you with our offering. So what that means is that instead of being a very sort of manual and expensive and difficult sort of scenario where you may not be able to truly test your disaster recovery, where you may not be able to meet your SLAs, with the new technology that we're bringing to the table, we can make disaster recovery really automated. We can get you very close to not losing data. And we'll talk about this today, our recovery point objectives with our service that is direct to cloud, no hardware required. Well, it's 15 minutes, 1-5. You can be back up and running in 5 minutes with data that has been synced 15 minutes ago. You know, one of our customers told us, an early adopter, a beta tester told us, look, being back online in 5 minutes with data that's only 15 minutes old, it looks like a glitch to the end users. It doesn't look like a problem. It doesn't look like there was some disaster or some issue. And that's what it is. That's what disaster avoidance is. It's about recovering quickly, recovering current data, which makes it relevant to your business. It's about meeting all of those SLAs for minimizing downtime. And it's about decreasing costs, right? Data recovery, data recreation is expensive. The ability to be back in business quickly, not to be out of business, is definitely an advantage from an economic perspective. And that's what we can deliver with our solution. Supporting your disaster recovery objectives is essentially supporting the business. And that's why it's called business continuity as well. That's allowing your business to keep on going by minimizing the impact of a problem. So we're delivering this as a service. And as I said, what's really important here is the fact that it is easy to deploy. It's easy for you to manage. Look, if you know how to use a browser, you know how to use our solution. And by the way, you're going to see that in a minute because Keith will do a great demo for us. And it's also priced right. It's affordable and something that you should consider in terms of the big picture. So look, if you look at alternatives in the market, of course, there's been, there have been services for a long time, and including cloud-based or service bureau type of services. And they're great, and they work really well, but they're typically reserved for the enterprise because they're expensive. Or you could be developing or setting up your own solution on-premise. Typically, it's going to require some skills. It's going to require what I call some assembly. And by the way, great solutions, those can work very well too, but they're not necessarily what you need for a number of use cases, including, for example, remote offices. And you may not have the appetite or the resources to engage in those deployments. So traditional disaster recovery services, in many cases, do not meet data loss requirements. The recovery point objectives could be certainly in the hour or hours. And in many cases, they actually require, for you to get a great recovery point objective, a little secret here, they require a local on-premise appliance. And guess what? If you're going to have a local backup and you're not going direct to cloud, well, there's going to be a cost somewhere. And you're going to have to manage that component in your environment. Now, of course, you could be doing a traditional backup to disk first on-premise and then go off to public cloud, and that's great too. All we're saying is, look, there is a place for a solution that takes your data, your critical systems data, direct to cloud with great characteristics that were previously reserved only to the enterprise in the past few years and only to on-premise solutions. Now we've changed that model. We can give you 15-minute RPO and 5 minutes RTO, no equipment needed, and that's exactly what ArcServe UDP Cloud Direct does for you. It was a solution that we designed to be a disaster recovery as a service cloud-based solution. It was born in the cloud, literally. As I indicated, it's been really sized and designed for mid-market organizations, so we can certainly handle quite a bit of data, and we can scale. Our technology in the back end in the data center is such that it really makes it fast to recover data, and it makes it very scalable, and we grow with you. You can add systems to the environment. We make this also very predictable in terms of licensing. So I just want to point out here that these are just some of the great new capabilities that modern technology can bring to you, and it can really change how your disaster recovery is actually executed should anything happen. And there's more. We've automated a number of workflows for you. We've made it simpler. We're helping you test on a regular basis your plan. We're actually showing you through reports and automated testing that your environment can be recovered. And we have built in a ton of security. So lots of great capabilities that, when brought together, really give you this peace of mind that should anything come up, well, you can be back up and running quickly with data that's going to be relevant and current, and all of that direct to cloud without any equipment on premise. So again, if I look at the use cases, and I suggested a couple, for example, if you have a very decentralized type of environment, number of field offices, maybe you're an engineering company, and you have a number of very critical documents that are critical to the projects you're working on, and you're all over the North American continent, for example. Well, that data is critical to your business. You can't afford to lose it, number one, and you need to get it back up and running should anything come up on those local sites. So that's just one example. There are so many possibilities. Maybe you have a call center, and you're dealing with transactional type of interactions with customers, and well, should anything come up, you want to be able to get that back up and running quickly so you don't lose too many transactions, so that you can keep that business going. So many examples here. The point is that this is an easy on-ramp to the cloud in terms of disaster recovery, because again, we don't require any on-premise hardware. It's a simple agent installation, and the management is done through a console, and you're going to see that in a minute. And as I mentioned before, we can scale very easily. So if I look at who's out there providing disaster recovery as a service, as I said, beware, just look for the right type of characteristics for your environment. I'll just give you a few points that you should really look for as you compare solutions and as you look for that disaster recovery as a service option. And again, as I said, you could very well be using this technology in combination with other backup and recovery strategies, including on-premise appliances, etc. I'm not saying everything is going to go to cloud. All I'm saying is, in many cases, having this type of capability, especially with the type of service level agreements we're talking about here, well, it can make a lot of sense for now to go straight to cloud, and that's really what we're seeing. So make sure you understand what the bandwidth requirements might be and how optimized the technology is under the covers to transfer data quickly and efficiently to the data center and back. Understand any sort of security and guarantees that may be around, again, the encryption, whether it's on-premise or in flight. Understand the RPOs and RTOs you can truly achieve with the solution in question. Are we talking hours? You really want that day-old data in 5 minutes? It makes no sense. You actually want to have current data, relevant data, back up and running quickly. The ability to run in a virtual data center, literally private data center, that's really what you're looking for. So understanding all of that, I think, is key. And these are just some high-level points for you to compare solutions out there. But enough said about that. Let me just sort of bring it together in terms of what we do with our portfolio. We are essentially a solution that comes together with a very centralized or unified view of the world when it comes to backup, recovery, archiving, and disaster recovery. And we do this through a console. And in the next few months, stay tuned. You're going to hear a lot more about this, but we're going to provide you with an even more integrated simplicity console that allows you to manage the whole environment, regardless of the use case of the workflow you're trying to achieve with your data protection endeavors, what the engines you're going to be using under the hood in terms of deployment, whether it's a Cloud Direct like we're going to talk about here in a little more in a few minutes in a little more detail, or maybe it's a hybrid solution where you have some on-premise equipment and some public cloud or some private cloud or maybe an appliance. All of this ultimately are just deployment flexibility options. What matters to you is to be able to manage and really have that simplicity of deployment from a unified console. So this is the way we're looking at this. Today, we're going to focus on that direct to cloud component, the disaster recovery as a service, and how we can achieve that very short recovery point objective and very short recovery time objective going direct to cloud with no equipment needed. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Keith, who's going to take you through the architecture and then a great demo. Keith?
Yep, thanks, Christophe, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So here, I wanted to give a high-level overview of the architecture or the workflow, if you will. So it initially starts with the Cloud Direct agent that's deployed onto your Windows servers, or if you're in a virtual environment, your virtual machines, we do have agentless support, so you can protect virtual machines that are running in a VMware or a Microsoft Hyper-V environment. But the next step is, of course, to capture that image of that server or that virtual machine image. And those images are securely transferred from your on-prem environment, no additional or on-prem hardware required, but they are transferred securely via SSL in flight, and then the data is encrypted, or those images are encrypted using AES encryption at rest in the data center that we provision for you in our data center. So as part of our disaster recovery solution, we provision a virtual data center for you that includes a firewall, a VPN server, an IP network, so that when you power on those servers, they have an IP network. You also get an external IP address, so you're able to access this virtual data center from an external standpoint. And as well as you also get compute resources so that you can power on those virtual instances in the cloud. Now, this is all managed through our UDP Cloud Direct management portal. It's a hosted web portal, so if you have access to the internet and access to a web browser, you're able to log in, administer, and manage your environment. Now, from that web portal, you're able to activate or spin up your virtual instances of your systems. You're able to establish connections to those recovered servers in this virtual data center that we provision for you. And then another key aspect of disaster recovery is the ability to fail back from the cloud back to your on-prem environment. And that's basically taking those servers, while they've been running in the cloud, those recovered servers, and using those as a starting point, if you will, as a way of restoring or recovering your on-prem environment. So without further ado, then let's jump into a demo to actually see this product live. Okay, so I will begin to share my screen, and Christophe, if you can let me know whether you see it.
And you're up and running.
Excellent, thank you. So here is the web-based management interface that I mentioned. This is the user interface for managing and administering your UDP Cloud Direct solution, whether it is you're just using it for backup or disaster recovery, same user interface. So I'm going to log in here with my credentials. We also support Google two-factor authentication. So if you needed added security when logging into your management portal, we give you that option as well. So here I will log in. And here, as you can see, we have a management or managed service provider interface, if you will. As you can see, I'm managing multiple customers here. I have 7 customers, total of 20 systems, and a combined storage usage capacity of over 800 gigabytes. I can get a quick view of my customer status. Green is usually good. We also, if there were any problems or indications that customers would need additional review, then these banners, this color here, would show up as either yellow or red. So ideally, you could log in and get a quick overview of how your customers are doing. You could take a look at the details of a specific customer here. I'm looking at Acme Customer 1, and I can see that I'm protecting 14 systems for this customer. If I want to take a look at those systems, I get this systems view, and these are all the systems that are being protected. As I mentioned, we have agent-based protection, where we deploy a lightweight agent to either your Windows systems, your Linux or Mac. From a backup perspective, for Linux and Mac systems, we can do files and folders, but for Windows systems, we can do a lot broader, a lot more backup tasks, and I'll show you that quickly. But on this screen, as you can see, the operating system, the name, the last backup, when the last backup was performed, when it was started, when it ended, and whether it completed successfully. You can also, at any point in time, log in and kick off a backup. So if you're somewhere and you're managing this on behalf of a customer, the customer calls you and say, hey, can you kick off a backup for me? In addition, or outside the bounds of the schedule, because we do have the ability to do scheduled backups, we're able to do that as well. So you can come in here. If you want to look at configuring those backup tasks, you go to configure, and as you can go down here, you can see you can have multiple backup tasks for a system. So if I wanted to protect the system state as well as the entire system, or if we take a look here, these are some other options. I can do files and folders. So maybe you want to do a backup of files and folders for a system, as well as backing up the entire system image. You have those options to do that as well. And then, of course, you have the ability to do pre and post scripting as well. Now, after setting the backup task, you have the option to set up the schedule. You can do it on a daily basis at a particular time of day. You also have the ability to set up bandwidth throttles so that you can control how much your network is used to perform these backups during the times of day. And you can, as you can see here, you can stack multiple bandwidth throttles. So limit it between, before everybody gets in, or right after everyone gets into work, from, let's say, 8 to noon, maybe open it up from 12 to 1 while people are out to lunch, bring it back down from 1 to 5, and then after 5 o'clock, open up the bandwidth so that your backup's complete. So this is the agent-based approach. As I mentioned, we also have an agentless approach, and I'll show you that in a bit. But a key part is the restore capability. So if I wanted to restore from my recovery points, I select the backup task that I want to restore from. Here, I'll go to this volume or this image restore. I can restore from the most current, or I can go back in time, if you will, to an earlier period in time. And if I can restore the entire image, or if I need to just find that PowerPoint presentation that I need, or that Word document that I am looking for, then I can simply navigate and do a file level recovery. So you have that capability to restore. Now, if I go back to my systems view, as I mentioned, we also have an agentless protection. So I'll click on my virtualization tab. We do support it for VMware as well as Microsoft Hyper-V. Now, for VMware, which I have deployed here, we have a virtual appliance that deploys into your vSphere environment. It communicates to vCenter, and what it will do is we'll discover all of the virtual machines that are in that environment. And if at any point in time you wish to protect any of those systems or those virtual machines, whether those virtual machines are running Windows or Linux, you simply hit Enable Backup. And then when you hit that Enable Backup, that's an indication that the appliance on the schedule that you specify will wake up and back up those virtual machines. Those virtual machines that you are protecting will also appear here on your Systems tab. So as you can see at the top part, these are my agent-based protected systems. And then you can see down here with the VMware denotion, these are my agentless systems, these are my virtual machines that are being protected agentlessly. And if you have a large environment and you need to filter between those, here you can see all systems, or if I wanted to just condense this view to just my agent-based systems or my agentless systems, you have that capability as well. Now, another aspect is the ability to enable disaster recovery. So as you can see in this environment, I have both backup as a service as well as disaster recovery. And the ability to enable disaster recovery is really straightforward. You log in, you click the Enable Disaster Recovery button, you specify how much RAM you want the system to have when you power on the system in the cloud. You optionally specify the licenses on the system, and then you simply hit save. When you hit save, the indicator goes, or the button goes away, and the indication is that this system is protected using disaster recovery. Now, what we're announcing today and to leading the fight against day-old data is when you go into create or specify your schedule, you get more options. And so you can specify that frequency not only on a daily basis, but every 6 hours, every hour now, and especially today, now every 15 minutes. So the data or your recovery points or the data that you're recovering from can be as recent as every 15 minutes. And so that's the key that we're announcing today, that ability in our fight lead against day-old data. So when you recover that, your recovery point could be just 15 minutes old. So when you enable disaster recovery for a system, those DR protected or disaster recovery protected systems will appear on your disaster recovery tab. And as you can see here, these are all the systems that I'm protecting using disaster recovery. And something that we do is we periodically spin up the virtual machine and then take a screenshot of the login screen to kind of give you that extra view that the system can be booted in the cloud. And so it kind of gives you that little extra confidence that the system can be booted in the cloud. And then in order to activate the system or bring a system up, you simply hit activate. You hit activate, and then you pick the recovery point that you want to be the basis for that system. As you can see here, I can just go back 15 minutes. I don't have to go back to the day before. I can go back just 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You have the option with this 15-minute RPO that we've now and today just introduced. You have that capability. So I can go back to this earlier time. I simply hit activate, and then the system begins to power on. Now, the RTO, or the recovery time objective, is about the time it takes for the operating system to power on. This is a Windows system, so it may take a few minutes for it to power on. And while that's doing that, I like to explore a little bit more about the pages, about this user interface. Here, you do, as I mentioned, you get an externally facing IP address, so you can establish port forwarding into the virtual data center that we provision for you. Connecting to those recovered systems or virtual instances in the cloud, you can set up a point-to-site VPN connection, so a secure connection to the network and the virtual data center that we provision for you, as well as we can help you establish a site-to-site VPN connectivity. So that's establishing your on-prem network securely to the network that's running in the virtual data center that we provision for you. This is ideal, so you may see the term IP takeover. Not all disasters involve all of your systems going down. Maybe you have one or two systems that go down. What you're able to do with site-to-site VPN is you can spin up virtual instances in the cloud, and then those on-prem systems can talk to those cloud recovered systems via that site-to-site VPN connection. So very important, because it's more, disaster recovery is more than just spinning up service, it's having that ability to connect to them. A bit more about the user interface. Of course, there's the volumes. These are logical containers where customers' data is stored. So when you perform your backups or you perform your snapshots, this is where your data is stored. Each of these volumes or logical containers have retention policies that you can that can vary. One week, 1 month, 1 year, however long you need to retain the data. Usage. You can kind of get a view of how your systems, how your storage has been changing and evolving over time. You can look at the more current, or you can go back in time to see where there's valleys where maybe data has rolled off due to retention periods expiring, and you can see where things start to ramp up as more data comes on. Maybe you're protecting more systems, or more changes have been applied to a system, so therefore the data is increasing. Reporting, as was mentioned, very important key aspect of the product. We provide for you a daily digest that's sent to you on a daily basis. It's sent to your email, and then in the body of the email is a table that lists all of the systems that are being protected, their backup status, how long it took, and actually how much data was actually transferred from your on-prem environment directly to the cloud. So after an initial full backup, we only back up the changes. So that optimally uses your network bandwidth. So that's sent on a daily basis. You also have the option to create other reports, such as a backup report here. You can say, send it to me on demand, so send it to me now. And then an email will be sent to you with the data about the backups for all of your systems. Or you can schedule a backup report to be delivered to you. You provide it a name, a delivery schedule or a time of day, the delivery frequency, daily, weekly, or monthly. And then you can specify the recipients of this. It could be people who have access to this portal, but if you're managing on behalf of other customers, you may not want them, or they may not want to even log into this portal, but you can still specify them as recipients to these reports by just adding them as an additional email recipient. Another aspect that we add about the reporting, if you're protecting a large environment and you have customers or you yourself are just interested in a subset or smaller, maybe more priceless or very significant or critical systems, you can create a report that just gives you information on those critical systems as well. And you can have multiple instances of these backup reports. You can have a backup report that contains only your critical systems. You can have a backup report sent to everybody that contains information about all of the systems. You have that flexibility in the reporting, also with the alerting as well. So send me an alert if someone attempts to do a restore. Send me an alert if a restore fails, or if a backup fails, or send me an alert when the backup completes. You have that capability as well. Also, for users, you have the ability to provide access to this portal. Here, in this case, these users that you see, since this is more of an MS or managed service provider view, these are users that have access only to this customer's view. This is a multi-tenant environment, so these customers can only see this view. When I logged into the portal, I logged in as a managed service provider, so I can see all of my customers. We also have the ability for you to create what we refer to as managed service providers that have limited access. So when they log in, rather than seeing all customers, you may only want them to see one or two customers. So you have that capability as well. And then these admin or these users to this account can have full admin rights or just the ability to restore. So you have that role-based management capability. So now let me go back to the disaster recovery tab. We should have provided Windows enough time to boot up, and indeed we have. So here you can see this system that I activated is powered up. You can see that it has the amount of RAM that I specified that it to have when I enabled disaster recovery. It has an IP address. I can establish a remote desktop connection to this system and log in using my Windows credentials. I can power it off. I can restart it. And as I mentioned, in the event of a disaster, you're running in the cloud, your users are still using that system, so it's capturing changes and things of that nature. So when you go to recover your on-prem environment or perform this failback, you want to use this system as an instance or as a basis for recovering your on-prem environment. And so there you have it. This is the overview of our solution, UDP Cloud Direct, backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service, whichever you choose to use, all with one web-based user interface. We try to make it as simple and easy to use as possible to help you recover. The thing that we've introduced today is from a DR protected systems, you can have that data backed up as frequently as every 15 minutes. So you don't have to recover day-old data. You can recover more recent data and then keep your business running. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Christophe.
Thank you very much, Keith. And we have a number of questions. And remember, at the conclusion of the questions session, we'll have the winner of our Amazon card. So let's get started with the questions. There are a couple of licensing questions. So Keith, can you walk us through briefly at a high level, how is this service licensed? And specifically, there were questions around storage.
Absolutely. So the product, the Cloud Direct backup as a service, if you will, is licensed for the amount of storage that you consume on a terabyte basis. So how much cloud storage do you need to protect your on-prem environment? And then that subscription includes unlimited deployments of the UDP Cloud Direct agent. Now for disaster recovery as a service, what the licensing involves the cloud storage that you need to protect your system images or your virtual machine images, and the compute resources that you need, such as the amount of RAM to power on those systems in the cloud. So for backup as a service is primarily cloud storage. For disaster recovery as a service is cloud storage plus the amount of RAM that you need to power on those virtual instances in the cloud. We do give other options. There are other optional purchases you can make, such as if you need an Active Directory server that's running in your virtual data center at all times that we provision for you. So when you fail over to the cloud, you have that Active Directory server to do your authentication of your users. You can purchase the Active Directory server if you wish, but that's primarily how it's licensed. Backup, cloud storage, disaster recovery, cloud storage, plus the amount of RAM that you need.
Thank you, Keith. Very, very good explanation here. And I think it also points to the fact that there are no surprises here with this type of pricing. Of course, you're still going to have to understand the storage requirements, but it's at the same time, there's no surprise in terms of special metering or anything like that. So that's really nice to know. Do you support on-premise Hyper-V or cloud only? I'm not sure I followed the question, but I think the question is, do you support Hyper-V? And obviously, we're protecting data that's on-premise. Then we obviously copy it to our environment where you can stand up that virtual machine. There are a couple of other questions that I want to address before we get back to Cloud Direct, where people are asking us whether we support public cloud like AWS or Azure. And let me just explain that this solution is our own ArcServe Cloud. However, we have, as part of our portfolio, a backup and recovery and disaster recovery solution that comes in with built-in replication, and that's our UDP Classic, if you will. And that solution does support replication to public cloud, including some pretty interesting capabilities in public cloud. So just wanted to let you know that it may not be the Cloud Direct solution. It is another part of our portfolio, but we do support those environments, and more than happy to give you more details. If you can please, contact us. We'll follow up with you and tell you more about this. Now, that also includes the ability to replicate to multiple locations, not just public cloud. So, but again, slightly separate solution here. How long will it keep backups? Sometimes users tell me they lost something a year ago or more, but don't know when it was lost and need it now. Well, what a surprise. So, Keith, what's the retention policy? How flexible is it?
We do have flexible retention policies, so I think by default it's we create one for you that if it's 7 days or a month or a year, but we can extend that you have the flexibility of specifying that retention policy.
Perfect. So in the case that you think users would be looking for data that may be a year old or more, you're going to have to specify over a year, essentially.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Another very good question, because we talked about bandwidth and bandwidth optimization. What kind of bandwidth is required if you want to have 15-minute backup schedules?
You would want to have some bandwidth in the tens of megabytes, if you will, because of course And it all depends on your change rate on your system. Because as I mentioned, we do an initial full backup. So we'll take the time, and our backup agent does bandwidth optimization. So it will optimize the transfer of that data, and we'll try to send as much data as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So there's that. But then to do that 15-minute RPO, it all depends on how much change is taking place on the system that's being protected with that 15-minute RPO, and to make sure that you have the bandwidth to transfer all of that data from on-prem to the cloud to meet that 15-minute time window, if you will. And so it does depend. We like it to be on the tens of megabytes if possible. Like I said, it unfortunately the answer is it depends.
Okay, thank you. But certainly something that we can help you as you size up the environment, as you get ready. Part of the process for engaging with us when we set up the service, although it's easy for you to do it on your own, we typically will provide you with best practices. I think it's something that our customer success team does for new customers, and certainly it's one of the areas that we discuss with you just to make sure that you get everything you need.
That's right.
There are a number of questions around supported platforms and supported applications. So can you kind of, again, run us through the high level of the supported environments, Keith?
Yep. So from the supported, so agent-based, we do support Windows, Mac, and Linux. So for the agent-based approach, we support files and folders on Linux and Mac. However, with Windows, we can do files, folders, the entire system, SQL or Exchange data. So that's from an agent-based perspective. From an agent-less perspective, we support VMware as well as Hyper-V. And then those VMware VMs can be running Windows or Linux. And we capture the entire image, so then you'll be able to, from a DR perspective, you'll be able to boot those up in the cloud. So I think that captures the operating systems. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, and I've seen a couple of questions where people are asking us whether we support CIFS shares, essentially NAS, network stack storage environments. Multiple brands were mentioned here. So I think with Cloud Direct, how does that work with Cloud Direct, and maybe how does that work with UDP? And I can help with that as well.
Yeah. So with Cloud Direct, we do can do CIFS or NAS shares as long as you deploy the backup agent to a server that has access to those CIFS shares. Then we can back those up as files and folders. So we can definitely handle that from a Cloud Direct perspective.
Perfect. Yeah, and our on-premise or appliance solution, so software or appliance, which of course also goes to cloud, public cloud or private cloud, supports also those environments. So I think we've covered quite a few questions. There is one final question that I kind of want to cover here, which is the location of our data centers in terms of countries. There's a specific question from one of our listeners here around whether there is the ability to specify a Canadian or European data center, and yes, there is. I'm not going to go into the details of your question, but I will say that we have just announced the opening of a UK data center, and we are also present in North America, a couple of coasts, as you can imagine. So for the scenario in which you would not want to be replicating into the US territory, which I understand is a specific point you're making here, we can have you replicate to a European data center, and that's going to be in the UK if that's acceptable to you. So please, again, engage with us, and we can work with you on that opportunity to deploy the solution, which, based on what I see, is definitely a backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service option. Okay, let me see. A couple more questions came in, so maybe we'll take one more, and then we will announce the winner of the 500 Amazon card. Can you give an example of the time it takes to fail back after disaster to an on-site server from the cloud? So failback sort of scenarios, Keith.
Yep, so the failback scenarios are, I mean, of course, it all depends on your bandwidth, unfortunately. because you are bringing back those images from the cloud. So what we try to do is, the failback process, you don't want to disrupt those, your recovered environment. So if your users are using the system in the cloud, they continue to use it as we begin the transfer of a snapshot image of that system that's running in the cloud back to your on-prem environment. Then we take another, we capture yet again a few changes, and we bring that down, which should be take a smaller amount of time. And then the final transfer is we let you know that, hey, we're ready to transfer the final amount of changes. At that point, we shut down the system. We take the final snapshot, we shut down the system, and then transfer that last little bit. So the time to recover from the cloud or fail back from the cloud all depends on your bandwidth, but we try to do it so we allow your customers or your users to continue using the environment as we're bringing back that image. So if you have a gigabyte or multi-terabyte system that you want to bring down, we begin the process of bringing that data down while users can still use the system in the cloud. And then once that transfer has been completed, then you're able to use that image that was brought down as a basis for recovering your on-prem environment.
Perfect, thank you. And then, a couple quick questions here. I think probably one of our existing customers asking, is there an upgrade path from previous version, or is this a new installation only? So yeah, it's a new agent that you have to download from the console, right, Keith?
Actually, the updates are rolled out. So we users of our solution, they can choose to disable automatic updates, but the way we delivered this capability is by updating your agent. And so if you have automatic updates, you may very well have access to this. If you go in and if you have disaster recovery in your account, you would enable disaster recovery for a system. And when you enable disaster recovery, you will see the option to specify your retention or your backup frequency, or RPO, as often as every 15 minutes.
Perfect. That's very simple. And then a couple of, again, clarifications. Yes, we support Exchange and SharePoint. And there was a question around whether we restore the entire server for Exchange. And I think the answer is yes, we restore the entire server.
That's correct. We restore the entire server for Exchange. If you're doing backup as a service and you are backing up just the Exchange files, then you're able to back up restore the Exchange files, database files. But if you're using disaster recovery and you're protecting an entire Exchange server, if you want to bring that back, then we would bring back the entire server.
Perfect. And there were a couple of questions on trial periods and trial possibilities, and I think that's something you can just get from our website.
Yep, we do have trials. Visit our website and you can get started right away. You can get started today.
Right. I think it's a 30-day trial, isn't it? So, absolutely. Just go ahead and check arcserve.com, and then you can look for UDP, ArcServe UDP Cloud Direct, and look for the option there to trial the solution. Okay, good. So lots of questions that we've covered. We are getting to the end of this webcast. I would like to announce the winner of our 500 Amazon gift card, and the winner is Alexander Lee. Alexander Lee, you will be contacted by us, and we'll make sure you get your card. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you for your time, and thank you very much, Keith, for your great demo and answering all of these questions.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.